background on this, I'll kind of poke around a little bit. I know there's some more nuance to this, but
what
is going on?
I was just cruising around some feeds, and I noticed that this guy, scroll up, what's his name, Mr. Talk to Me?
Yeah,
Takumi. He had like this concern that he was dealing with, where he said that Seller had his address blacklisted, and he had already started some communications with Seller, and I guess Seller had messaged him back and said it was because he had used the bridge, pulseramp.com. I'm like, oh, well, that's a little bit concerning. That's interesting. What's going on here? So I started digging around some more, found some pictures. I attempted to use the bridge myself. I reached out to some other people. They attempted to use Seller's bridge. And anybody I talked to that had used PulseRamp Bridge was unable to use Seller's bridge. And I said, well, I think this is actually happening. Don't know why it's happening, but it is happening, and it's worth it's worthwhile information for the community to know about, because we can't only talk about the good things that happen. And then when something bad happens, the community is just unaware and taken by surprise, and maybe even screwed if it was something serious enough, right? So I thought it was worthwhile information to share.
So what exactly is the ramifications of this? It sounds like there's one DeFi project that is for one reason or another suspected. They don't think PulseChain people interact with the bridge are legit in one way, so they're not letting them interact with their product. And then what is the impact to actual users on this?
TRM Labs keeps a record of addresses that are validators that are not OFAC compliant, is one example of what they would stick on a list. Addresses that are known to be from a hack or a theft that have obtained funds, they'll stick those addresses on a list. Addresses that, the Department of Justice has said, we believe that those are, fraudulent, or there's some sort of investigation going on, they'll stick those addresses on a list. So it appears TRM has labeled PulseRamp as an investment fraud, is how it's described. Even though it's just a bridge, just a way to and from a blockchain, it's on their list of investment frauds. Now, why? Is it because the SEC has labeled Richard as a scammer, and PulseRamp, PulseChain, and Hex is all part of that? And in their document, their SEC document, it kind of lists all those things as scammy. So they just ran with that and said, let's find those addresses, stick it on there. Now anybody who interacts with that is going to come up on a secondary list over here and be blacklisted. I don't know. Okay. Now it's worth noting that a lot of this is very subjective. So just because one entity like TRM Labs put PulseRamp addresses or addresses that have used it on a list, well, who uses TRM Labs? There's dozens of hundreds of DeFi protocols. There's hundreds of bridges, and they certainly don't all use TRM Labs. And other security organizations may have different criteria for lists, or better understand the ramifications of just blanket blacklisting, all users. So it's not the end of the world. Okay, there's still other ways in and out of PulseChain. There's still on-ramp methods. Where people should get concerned is if, let's just pretend in a couple days, another bridge and another entity, or God forbid, a big entity like Circle or the maker people who have controlling votes, they vote and they do something that blacklists, all users from PulseChain or something. If it starts to become a pattern where entities just one after the other start doing it, that's when we should all kind of scratch our head and say, this ain't good. But at the moment, it's just one entity. It's not that big of a deal. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, even then, I mean, even the imaginary horrible of like Circle or like some big entity and platform where we're fun back and forth, and they have control over that stuff and the centralized pieces of it. Even if that happened, I mean, isn't that like why we're building all this stuff, all the community products, all the fiat on ramps, all the 0x Coast building all this stuff? Isn't that the reason to get rid of the gatekeeping and try to at least limit it or avoid it as much as possible if we have our own stuff to use?
Well, I mean, that's one. We're building it because we have a community that just likes to build things internally and not have to rely on third parties or wait for third parties. People prefer to rely on the people they know and wait for the people they know, right? And maybe there's a little more trust having your peers build these tools. So that's one reason. Another reason, sure, is censorship resistance, perhaps. If not saying that if there's a builder on PulseChain that is centralized, and they receive some sort of order from a government, right? There's still going to have to be some sort of that entity would still have to comply. But the majority of the things being built on PulseChain are completely decentralized. It's just code on the blockchain with nobody controlling it once it's deployed. Mutable stuff. That stuff is unstoppable. Bullish, bring up what Bullish just said. And it's worth, I don't think we can do it on stream here, but I'll certainly go in and do some research and attempt to do a transaction through seller. But he says that after TRM and seller talk to each other, it's no longer on the list, right? So
boom, winning.
Nice. Well, and who knows? It could have been a false positive, right? It could have been someone, who trolled the community by reporting falsely to get something listed. This would not be the first time that someone who is around the community has tried to do things like that to PulseChain, Hex, and etc. Right? So there are people who want to just out of their own anger and frustration want to do ill will to the community or to the product, to PulseChain as an ecosystem by trying to do things like this, right? So I mean that's always a possibility. Again, it could have been a false positive as far as whatever flagged it in the first place, based on some algorithm that group uses, maybe falsely identified it. We have no idea, right? Because obviously they're not going to explain it to us. But if it is cleared up and rectified, then that's awesome. That's great news.
Yeah, all these things I feel like, putting into context, it just seems like there's a bunch of companies doing a bunch of stuff, and there's always somebody who's making a decision that maybe we've empowered you to make decisions, but where's that data coming in from? Who is did they check with this person, that person? Now they start it always gets messy when you start creating blacklists and all these different gates, all these different ways of trying to play whack-a-mole. Maybe you don't have good information or not. Could have been somebody could have just tried to FUD PulseChain, or they could have just looked and see, hey, whatever the SEC says, let's do that for now. But then you got people, maybe you get a lot of people complaining, a lot of people in the community saying, hey, this is my stuff, this is my money, this is my network. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's the opposite of what crypto was invented for, right? Like stop trying to stop me from transacting. So that's pretty cool. You saw it live on stream. We had ungate kept, and we just another win for us, hopefully. Knock on wood.
Definitely thanks to Bullish for mentioning that and helping us find that out. Yeah, it's not the first time that we've seen this in its ecosystem, right? And some of these things have nothing to do with PulseChain, but they impact, say, some of our users. So, those who are in the US, I think we first experienced like being cut off from, say, 1inch, right? When 1inch decided they're no longer supporting, this market due to SEC regulations and other things, right? And then you see other DeFi projects start to maybe follow in their footsteps, where there are some projects that chose to rule out certain markets based on those regulations. Then you see something where after, the civil suit against Richard Hart was announced, Uniswap, filtering out certain tokens from their front end, right? Focusing specifically on those items and not necessarily cutting off an entire market. So, this is not the first time we've heard of censorship within the crypto sphere. It won't be the last time, sadly. But the goal is having redundancy, knowing multiple routes in and out of your blockchain, multiple tools that you can work with, multiple dexes you can trade through, using dex aggregators, kind of like our PortalX that is live at portalxswap.io, to try to get you from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. Now, the nice thing is the aggregators, they call the contracts underneath directly. So it is the aggregator running the contract. It is not necessarily your wallet directly calling it. So, that's how PortalX is able to still aggregate 1inch as a service, even though you might be, say, in North America or in the US, where you normally wouldn't be able to access it because they're blocking IPs. So, there are other ways, and it's just a matter of just researching the tools that are available to you to be able to, to make the best use of blockchain in general, right?
Definitely. That's it never ceases to amaze me. All the stuff that comes up in our community is just, we have the tools, we have the people, we have the will to just make this thing into something amazing. And whether Richard's here or whether Richard steps away or whether whatever happens with things, I think that we have everything we need. We have the people we need here to build this cool stuff. And I'm glad that we could celebrate this win together on stream. It's always fun to see this stuff happen. So thanks, Jesse, for noticing it too. And that's something that, again, I know every time something that's people don't want to see or don't want to hear or otherwise comes up, FUD or real, it's not easy to talk about. But again, this is, to me, I look at it as an opportunity to understand, what's going on out there and how things are working. And in this case, we just got a reversal. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
better to be educated than to put your head in the sand and cry FUD, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Bringing attention to this stuff sometimes helps the community come up with a solution or puts a fire in people to go reach out to them. So when I see stuff like this, and it's like, let's say Mr. Takami's account is pretty small. So when he first posted, not a whole lot of people, like he had a couple people replying, but nobody really had any idea, right? It wasn't like everyone in the community knew about it. So, I think sometimes because I have a bigger account, more followers or whatever, okay, this is something that needs to be heard, and I'll retweet it. And then next thing you know, a couple days goes by and look, PulseChain's whitelisted again, right? So, I post about good stuff too, by the way.
Betsy, are you sure? I only get good information from you, and it's usually the bad stuff I need to know about. Are you sure you post good information too? Or the good stuff? Cool. Well, problem solved on that one. Glad